women, trans men, transatlantic voyages. I don't hate any of that stuff. You don't hate gay people? No. I hate their lifestyle, but I pray for their souls. The goal would be not to just go, hate the gay, let them all go to hell. Or, and this is controversial, we could do what the Lord said and go into and tell every creature. We could preach the gospel to every creature. We could go into all nations, and we could do all that. Athens, Greece, 776 BC, the Olympics were born. I did not read down, they got canceled. They were banned by the Romans. The Romans, how bad do you have to be to get canceled by the Romans? Mercy. But the Romans canceled them in 393 AD. So they had a good 600-year run, whatever. They started again. I couldn't tell if they just agreed to start them again in 1896 or that they, because there was, one thing I read said in 1894, some royal decided we're having it. It was agreed upon in 1896. I'm not sure if they started in 1896. Some of the places said they started again in 1924. But somewhere in that 28, 30-year period, they got restarted, and they've been going pretty strong since then. We have set out, America has taken a stand and set out if Russia was hosting or somebody else was hosting. We've had other countries protest and step out if certain countries were hosting. And so, but they've been going. So in the very earliest of events, if you look at the original drawings from the BC drawings back in Athens, Greece, you will notice something interesting, and that is all of the competitors were naked. They were all naked. They would run naked. They would compete naked, and the thought was that if you look big and strong, then you could intimidate your competitor. If I was wrestling, it would not take much to intimidate me and make me not want to wrestle a naked dude. I'd just be like, do what? No, I'm good. I'm good. I got to take my shirt off? No, I'm good. Nobody wants that. And so that's what they did. And the original intent of the Olympics was a form of worship to compete to see who could bring forth the best worship of Zeus and some of the other gods. It was always that way. It was always anti-real God, pro-false God from the beginning. It's hard to stay right if you don't start right. Okay? It's not surprising that heathen activity continues even today. In fact, I'm kind of surprised that they're not more overtly promoting Zeus and all that. But it's not just that they're not so much promoting the false god Zeus. The problem is that they seem to have put the real God, Jehovah God, God Almighty, the God of creation, the God of salvation, the God of hope, the only hope there is in this world, they put him in the crosshairs. Outright attacks. You have just mockery of the Bible. You have what appears to be now they're like, oh no, we're very sorry if anybody was offended. You mean that scene that everybody identified immediately as the Lord's Supper? That's not what it was. That's exactly what it was. And they don't like some of the blowback from that. They can't promote their God, so they attack our God. I think understanding the origin ought to help us kind of have a good beginning on what should we do about it. What should we do as Christians? What do? Do you just post it on social media? Do you find the coolest one and like and share? Do you wait until they come out on the satire sites and say all these companies did it and they pulled out, and when they haven't pulled out, and just share false information? Maybe that's what we should do, is just share all the false information. Don't study, don't look anything up. Just share it because it looks cool. I'm going to give us 3 ideas of what we could try to do. Number 1 is understand those origins. Understand the origins. It was never anything that was going to be pro-God. It was false God worship from the very, very beginning. I don't know why we want to look at that. I don't know why we care about that. There are plenty of sports. There's probably some kids in our church family that are involved in some sport and trying to be healthy, trying to get stronger, learning teamwork, learning cooperation, learning some humility. All those things are good. That's the good stuff about sports. Now, when it dominates our life and the parents are trying to relive their childhood through their kids, that's not good. If it takes them away from serving God, that's not good. Because, hey, I want you to hear me, parents. When we were kids, they didn't have football practice on Wednesday night. And we didn't play any games on Sunday. And I know your kid's probably going to change their life and go pro and win millions and millions of dollars if they play this one more game when they're 8 years old. Or probably not. The truth is, if Christians, even people that we don't believe like we baptize by immersion, somebody else sprinkles. We could both stand against taking our kids away from worship. We believe we take the Lord's Supper whenever we feel like it. When God lays it on our heart, that's when we're going to take the Lord's Supper. We're going to use non-alcoholic. We're going to use wine, vine, grape juice, and unleavened bread that we bake. Church up the street, they're going to use little wafers and unfermented juice. Church down the road over here, they're going to use fermented wine and little wafers. Now some of our friends, they're starting to ask us for our recipe on the unleavened bread. And because they're realizing it's just kind of cool the way we do it. It's more realistic. Can you imagine the Lord's Supper, the entire Passover meal, and all of a sudden they reach over and get them some little Baptist shot glasses, a little wafer? Probably not. I really like the way we do it. That doesn't make us better than anybody. It's other things that make us better than everybody. I'm teasing. I don't mean to be irreverent. But when we understand the origin of things, even somebody who their pastor wears a robe or their pastor wears flip-flops, we should all be able to take a stand on behalf of our kids on things that matter. I'm not saying be ecumenical. I'm saying we ought to be bold in our Christianity. Regardless of what we believe about this and that and different practices, we ought to all gather together and believe that our babies ought to be in church. When it's time to meet, let's meet. Hey, I think that teamwork, I think being physically fit, I think learning humility, I believe physical strength, all of those things I think are very, very important. Very important. I wish a lot of those things had become more important to me at an earlier age. But it cannot rise to the level of worship. And if it replaces worship, it has risen to that place. We should all be able to take a stand. But Christians don't take a stand. Christians won't take a stand against movies. We're Baptists, man. We like high standards. Man, we believe girls ought to look like girls, boys ought to look like boys, and we take a stand. And we believe in modesty. Modesty. But we'll sit and watch the Olympics with body parts hanging out of everything. That's not those camera angles are not on accident. Those are on purpose. Those uniforms, I remember a few years ago, the runners wore uniforms that were almost down to their knees. They were skin tight, but they covered everything, and everything was tight. And man, they could run, and man, it was not. I was like, somebody sent a video, or I was clicking through a video, and I saw a couple of girls running. I was like, nope, and just had to go. They're completely dressed inappropriate. They were basically wearing bikinis, and not good. We shot a cannon out in Alaska, and we stuffed more newspaper in the hull of that and knocked it down in the front of that cannon than there is material in these whole entire uniforms. That's ridiculous. Why would we have standards for our normal life, but then stare at a competition with people that are almost back to the original being naked? Why would we would not allow our neighbor, a stranger from up the street, to come and walk naked in front of our children, but we'll let them watch movies with naked in it? Guys, we need to understand the origin. I had an old man, I didn't even like him, and he didn't like me. But he was right about some stuff. He told me, he said, y'all go to the movies a lot, don't you? I said, oh yeah, every Monday, matinee, because we're stewards. Matinee, cheap. Angela had a cleaned out purse we could put snacks in, so you didn't have to spend too much because we're already going on the matinee. We'd buy one popcorn. You ever stuff your mouth full of hot popcorn and pop a milk dud in there? That's good times. He said, you shouldn't, this old man, he said, you shouldn't be going to the movies. I said, why? I said, we try not to go to anything that's going to have some naked in it. We don't try not to go to any that have cuss words in it. He said, all of Hollywood has an agenda, and it is not promoting God. I was like, whatever, old man. Just get over yourself. A couple years later, I got called to preach, went to Bible college. They made me sign a form, ethics form. Said I would not go to the movie theater. I thought, what is this? But I was like, okay, you know what? I told God I would do anything he wanted. I know God's called me to preach. This is where my pastor said I had to go to school. If this is the rule, this is the rule. I told Angela, we've been to our last movie. I signed on the dotted line. We're done. Man, I wish we had finished on a couple of better movies. And but it was what it was. It was. You can go back and look at what was showing in the summer of '99. It just wasn't good. But that's what we finished on. And we don't go to movie theaters. That's not our thing. We just don't go. That form is probably long gone. It might be in my file somewhere, but they're not asking for my diploma back. But we realized something. We went several months, like 8 or 9 months, without watching any movies at all, anywhere, because we were so busy. We had some old VHS tapes. Those were almost the size of a small box of cereal, and then they fit in this thing called a VCR, because we couldn't download back then. They didn't have Netflix and all that stuff back then. So we took this tape out of a box, and we put it in and hit play, and may not have had a remote control. We were the remote controls.